What's going on, everybody? Today we are breaking down all things about the 2025 Carolina Panthers, including if Chuba Hubbard deserves RB1 treatment in Fantasyland, if T-Mac can be the next great rookie wide receiver, if Bryce Young's second half of 2024 is a sign of even bigger and better things to come, all that and much more on today's Fantasy Life show. And accordingly, joining me, as always, we do have Fantasy Life Director of Analytics, all-around baller, the shot caller, Dwain the Rock McFarland. Dwain, let's start off with really the most proven element of this Panthers offense, and that is RB1 Chuba Hubbard. Really, snatched a job from Miles Sanders down the stretch of 2023, went on to have a great 2024, and now has a sort of money behind him to believe that maybe we're going to see even more fireworks in 2025. So, yes, they did sign, former Cowboys running back Rico Dowdle in free agency, but unfortunately, Jonathan Brooks is going to be sidelined for another year after his second ACL surgery. So, again, just in terms of volume and an offense that actually was low-key pretty good at run blocking, was set up really nicely going into 2025.
I just have to say really quickly, I was watching the 2022 Super Bowl, and it's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson out on the field ahead of the game, introducing the Bengals and the Rams. And I just don't live up to that. But I appreciate you continuing to call me the Rock. But yeah, it was really amazing. I was like, man, this guy is so good at what he does. But yeah, talking about Chuba Hubbard, man, he's the running back 16 right now in fantasy drafts. And if you look at what he did last year, I mean, from a points per game perspective, right, he was 13th at 16 and a half. And so that's still right there on that borderline running back one. And you might even say, man, that was a really tall task considering the offense that he actually played on was not that good. To score 10 rushing touchdowns last season on that Panthers offense is a pretty big accomplishment, but you wonder, like, can he keep it up? Now, here's what I will say. Like, the 8.5 utilization score ranked 4th last season behind only Alvin Kamara, Bijan Robinson, and Saquon Barkley. So he was a true definition of an every down back. You talked about they gave him the contract in season last year. Look at we already talked about the points per game, but man, 77% of the snaps last season, Ian, that was 3rd behind only Kyron Williams and JT. 76% of the rushing attempts, 2nd behind JT. 61% route participation. That was 6th in the NFL, and pretty good from a target share standpoint. 12% targets. That's 8th in the NFL. Now, a lot of that was due to they didn't really have many other players to throw to. If you look at his targets per route run, not necessarily great, but man, inside the 5, there was no worries. 88% of the carries inside the 5, right? And so that was a big help to that 10 rushing touchdowns. That was 4th best in the NFL. Oh, yeah, didn't leave the field, man, in the 2-minute offense. 82% of the snaps in the 2-minute offense was 11th best for running back. So, like, dude, he had everything. And to your point, all they did was sign Rico Dowdle. Like, might he lose a little bit of this? Maybe just because it's hard to keep that big of a workload up, but I don't think it's necessarily because Rico Dowdle's like coming in to steal this work. So I'm actually with you. I think that when you look at Hubbard, he's not been a guy that I've been prioritizing in fantasy drafts, but man, when I start off with 2 wide receivers and an elite tight end, Hubbard's definitely there, man, and in my range of guys I'm looking at. So I really do like where he goes in drafts. And maybe this offense turns it up a little bit. And I want to be careful here, right? It wasn't just the volume. Like, if you look at his efficiency, like, he really was – he was a running back 1 level performer. Yards per carry, 4.8, right? That's worthy of running back 1. Yards after contact, 3.5. Guys, the NFL average 2.9. He was way above that. Missed tackles forced, 20%, above the NFL average of 17%. Explosive rush rate was the one area where it wasn't great. It was 10%, but still slightly above the NFL average for a starting running back, which is 9.5%. So – not that effective as a receiver out of the backfield, 0.51 yards per route run. But, man, still, we were getting the targets. We were getting the checkdowns. The question is, does Tetairoa McMillan's arrival, right, maybe take some of that away in the passing game? I could certainly see that happening. So I think the way it goes wrong for Chuba Hubbard is he gets touchdown regression in the offense because the offense stays basically what it was last year, and he just doesn't get the same run out. But there's also a path in where he could actually smash where he's going right now. And that would be, what if this offense suddenly does take a step forward? We saw Bryce Young play better down the stretch last year. This is a Dave Canales coach team, which we like. You did add Tet McMillan. I know we're not that huge on Xavier Legette, but only going into year 2, Jalen Coker was a surprise as a rookie. It's not like we have a superstar cast, but I think a well-coached team that could take a step forward. And man, if that happened and he kept a similar role to what he had last year, he's for sure gonna beat the running back 16 price tag. So I could really see it going either way. I think the price is pretty good on him. I think my biggest takeaway for him has been when I've started off heavy with wide receivers, Chuba Hubbard has been a name that I've been very willing to click in that round 5 range.
Him and Kenneth Walker, man, exact same wavelength for me. Like, again, if I'm going 3 wide receivers, maybe I take a Trey McBride there as well. I feel like you can get these quasi RB1s at that round 5 price. And for that, man, I'll sign up 8 days of the week because the workload last year was incredible, man. Using your own utilization score. Again, Fantasy Life and Dwain's one-stop shop for all things utilization. 4th best mark behind only Alvin Kamara, Bijan Robinson, and Saquon Barkley on the season. So Dwain mentioned it too. The efficiency was incredible. I know we have, a variety of kind of stats we can use to try to sum up how good a running back actually is independent of their, teammates. But next gen stats, rushing yards over expected per carry tends to do a pretty good job. Only Derrick Henry, Saquon, and Jordan Mason, who was darn good in his own right last year, were better than Chuba. So 4-year, $33 million contract extension down the stretch of last year. They only gave Rico, man, a 1-year, $2.75 million deal. So I understand when you look at, some of the success rate metrics and even yards after contact, like Rico actually led the entire NFL in his percentage of carries to gain at least 3 yards after contact. Did some good things for the Cowboys, but I tend to think this is going to be more of a one-man show with Chuba. I actually took the liberty recently, Dwain, of going through last year and just seeing what offenses were most willing to leave a single running back on the field for the highest percentage of snaps. And in terms of at least 75% of the snaps, I mean, the Rams were number 1, of course. Then we had the Bengals in second place. Panthers, though, were tied with the 49ers, the CMC role, in terms of how often they were willing to leave Chuba on the field. So we both have him as our RB16. He's going alongside guys like Alvin Kamara, Breece Hall, James Cook, amongst others. And yeah, I think it's the right spot. I've sat here at various points in the offseason and wanted to move him higher, but man, RB16, if I can get this dude in round 5, 30 or so wide receivers off the board, sign me up for that.
Yeah, going after Breece Hall, James Cook, and Omari and Hampton, right? His role is definitely more locked in than Hampton. I think what people were looking at with Hampton, and rightfully so, we've talked about Hampton like he's a very good prospect, is what that could look like by the end of the year, man. If that dude's getting 70% of the carries on the Chargers offense, like it could break fantasy football. But if you look at the guys that go right after him, to your point, you've got Kenneth Walker, and this is right now using underdog ADP, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, and RJ Harvey. So I'm with you. I think like he's in a really good range of backs there. I like him just as much as all the guys. Actually, I prefer him over Kamara. I prefer him over Joe Mixon at this point, right? I still like Joe Mixon. I don't think Nick Chubb is coming in to steal everything, but I do think Nick Chubb is just enough that we don't see Mixon get like to those games where he gets like 75, 80% of the workload like we saw last year. I could still see a path for Chuba Hubbard, the younger player here, actually still doing that, being like a 70% snap player. So I do lean to him over Joe Mixon at this point. So it's a very interesting range that we have right there. I do want to ask you though, Ian, like I've been taking Hampton over him, but are you, or you're just saying, nah, man, just give me Chuba Hubbard. Like I know what the role is. I'm not going to worry about Hampton having to battle out Najee Harris.
Yeah, I've been lower on Hampton. He's still like my RB20, but I have been going with Chuba over here. The one thing that kills me with Hampton is everyone's like, man, look how big he is in some of these pictures. Like we've never seen Najee Harris, stand next to this guy either. So again, it's just more so the reality that, we've seen Greg Roman prioritize different players as opposed to rookie year J.K. Dobbins, who was crushing it. So at the end of the day, like I think with good health, Chuba could have 100 extra touches than Hampton next year, and we wouldn't even be like that shocked about it. So give me Chuba, but same tier, guys.
Yeah. If they both had the same workload and you knew it was going to happen, Hampton, how much higher? Yeah. Or hey, what if you put it this way? What if I could tell you Hampton does get to take over the lead role by week 8? Would that be enough, or would you still lean it to Chuba at that point? Obviously, I can't tell you this. Anyone that thinks they can tell you this, they're full of crap. But like we're just playing some scenarios out here. So let's say you knew that Hampton was going to take over by week 8, but you knew Chuba was locked in all year. Would that be enough to swing you to Hampton, knowing that you like the Chargers offense more?
Yeah, and I do think that would be it. Again, because, Hampton, okay, he is the next, great rookie running back. We like a lot of things he did there. But at some point, Chuba putting up these sort of ridiculous numbers that we've listed at the NFL level, I don't want to say Hampton's just more talented than the guy when, again, we have seen Chuba do this. I know the original draft capital has a role in that. So, again, if we knew by week 8 Hampton's going to be the guy for a Chargers offense that I believe in more primarily because of Justin Herbert and I guess probably a higher pass game ceiling for Hampton relative to his competition, yes, I would be more okay with that.
Ian's Galaxy brain question back to me. Well, what if Chuba Hubbard played on the Chargers?
No, he's not. So,
yeah.
But I will say, man, maybe that Chargers offensive line, they were adding more resources to it. I don't expect it to be a liability for long, but don't sleep on this Panthers group. Again, kind of just road paving their way for Chuba. Actually finished last year as PFF's 8th ranked unit, and this was with, each and every one of their starters missing at least one game. They do go ahead and return all 5 back this year. So Chuba's someone that, again, RB16 versus Hampton, I mean, that is a tough one, but I'm with you over guys like Kamara. I've also moved Chuba ahead of Joe Mixon, James Connors, David Montgomery's of the world. Give us Chuba. Have you been diving much into Rico Dowdle? It is interesting to me that he is available a good couple rounds past, the Ray Davises, Tyler Algiers, Trey Bensons of the world. Again, not expecting much standalone value, if any, but it is possible. And just from a pure handcuff upside potential, I mean, we saw how much they leave Chuba on the field. God forbid something happens to him. That would become the Rico show.
Yeah, so with Rico, I haven't been drafting him a ton because it's kind of, you play out these scenarios like, okay, if Rico does take over, how excited am I going to be about it? Like Chuba has shown to overcome a tough situation. I guess you could argue that Rico did too. You had those games late in the season without Dak. And anytime you do get an offense isolated down to one guy, you're going to get some spike weeks and stuff. But I just didn't see enough from Rico that would make me feel like, man, if this happened, he's probably helping me win my league. I'm probably getting to put him in my starting lineup, to your point, but is he really helping me, go off in a way that I'm just man, I got this thing on lockdown. So I have taken some Rico Dowdle, not been a guy that I've necessarily prioritized just because I think he's a middling to below average back overall. And I'm not that crazy about the Panthers offense. I'm hopeful for the Panthers offense, but I'm not crazy about it. I think Chuba Hubbard, to your point, is actually talented enough, and this says a lot about him, that he's actually overcome some of that.
Again, not going to hate on anyone being priced outside the top 50 players of their own position that much, but I do tend to agree with Dwain. At that point in draft, haven't been. I like to have my running backs already, ideally, because, we can talk ourselves into Miles Sanders and Rico Dowdles of the world, but, maybe the best answer to who to target that late is just try to draft better running backs earlier. What a concept that is. But let's talk about the next, great hopeful star in this offense, Dwain. It is going to be number 8 overall pick, Tetairoa McMillan, a.k.a. T-Mac, because that is a lot easier to pronounce. So looking at T-Mac's prospects in year 1, a lot of people do have him as the wide receiver 1 in the class, particularly when comparing, his obvious lock for a full-time role relative to Travis Hunter. So not the most target competition here in the world. I mean, Xavier Legette, yes, was a first rounder himself last year, but very end of the round. And hey, obviously was dealing with a few things throughout the year, but very, very bad company when you look at fellow first rounders who couldn't crack even 500 yards during their first season. We've also seen Adam Thielen, when he's not injured, actually go out and still provide some really nice, per route efficiency during these last 2 years in Carolina. Heck, we even got Jalen Coker, shout out to all my Coke heads out there, also doing his thing. So again, between these guys, Dwain, do you think there's enough upside here for T-Mac to return the sort of, upside wide receiver 2 numbers that he's currently being priced there?
Well, I mean, look, some of this will come back to Bryce Young, but let's just talk about the talent, right, of Tet McMillan, and he could help elevate really Bryce Young, right? There's this chicken or the egg kind of thing going on, right, with the weapons versus the quarterback. Obviously, it takes both parties coming together to really make the magic happen. But when we look at Tet McMillan, man, and the supermodel rating, a 92 overall, guys, remember everything with the supermodels on a scale of 50 to 100. So 92 is a very good mark. That's the 7th best in the rookie supermodel going back to 2018. Remember, we've had guys like Malik Neighbors, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle. We've had some really good wide receivers come into the league since 2018. So to be number 7 is really strong. His draft capital rates at a 91. His production from college ranks out at an 88. And his film grade came in at an 82. If you look at the hit rate over the first 3 years for similar players to the way that Tet McMillan graded out in the model, going on to be top 12 wide receivers, 30% of them. So 1 and 3. We really like that. It may sound like 1 and 3. That's good, guys. It's really hard to be much higher than that. So got a good shot at him turning into a top 12 wide receiver. We know that rookies break out, or these receivers break out typically in their first 3 years, more so year 2 and 3, but we get quite a few that also break out as rookies, and that could happen for Tet this year. And his ceiling is being a top 12 wide receiver. If we look at the rest of the group, this is where it gets really fun though. Ian, top 24 finishes within their first 3 seasons, 80%. So a near lock when you look at his historical comps to go on to at least be a wide receiver 2. Obviously, if the top 24 finishes are that high, you can guess where the top 36 number is. You got it. 100% of his comps went on to at least be a wide receiver 3 by year 3. The question is, what can he do in year 1? But the good news is you can kind of see what that range could look like. So I really do like Tet McMillan. I've been drafting him quite a bit. Some people had some concerns about him really being more of like this possession receiver type. But man, when you go back and look at the data, Ian, one of the things I noticed, he attacked all 4 layers of the field. I get it, guys. It's college. Moving to the NFL can be a little bit of a different thing. And that's where some of the film evaluators gave a little bit of a knock on Tet. But listen to this, man. Behind the line of scrimmage, only 7% of his targets came there. If you look at 0 to 9, which we call short, that's 35%. So right in line with the average NFL draft pick going back to 2018 that went in round 1. Medium, so 10 to 19 yards, 33%. That's 7 percentage points above the average college NFL draft pick. So like this is a guy that worked really well at the intermediate range of the field. And then the last part, deep. So targets 20 plus yards down the field, 25% of the time. That's 3 percentage points above the average 22% for an NFL draft pick going back to 2018. So might he be a little bit hindered in some of these areas as he makes the next step? I don't know. It could happen. But in college, he really was doing it at all 3 levels. So I don't think we can dismiss that he might actually be good at every area of the field. And man, this dude thrashed man coverage, 29% targets per route run. So basically, whenever his quarterback dropped back and saw he had man coverage, he's going to Tet McMillan, which is something you really like to see. You guys listen to Matt Harmon. What's one of the big things he talks about? Beating man and beating press man coverage. He talks about that always even being one of the big indicators. We all love Matt Harmon's work in reception perception. So some of the underlying data just kind of lining up from that perspective as well. So final thing, man, is low or old target competition. You kind of laid it out. Xavier Legette was not good in year 1. He was also a bad prospect as far as he shouldn't have been taken as early as he went based on what the supermodel said about him. Said he should have been more of like a round 4 NFL draft pick. So when you look at that, plus how he performed, and we love Adam Thielen, but man, eventually Adam Thielen has to stop doing this, Ian. Maybe. I feel like there's a really good path here. I think Tet McMillan immediately leads this team in targets in year 1.
And that is how the fantasy life projections are shaking out. One of the bigger discrepancies between, the number 1 and number 2, I think it's like 123 to 80 the last time I checked it. So again, T-Mac fully expected to be the lead guy. And I will say, just speaking about some of those concerns about him maybe being this more, one-dimensional possession receiver. Oh, look at his contested catch rate. That must mean he can't really separate. This dude forced 29 missed tackles last season, man. Marvin Harrison Jr., his last year, had 5. Matthew Golden had 8. Xavier Legette had 9. I mean, even someone like Emeka Ibuka, Brian Thomas, they were only at 10 and 11. So really, again, once I did start watching some of the film on this dude, didn't see those concerns popping up. I know he's playing Arizona, wasn't necessarily, facing a grueling SEC schedule every single day. But again, when the NFL tells us this dude's a legit top 10 talent, and we even get word, Dwain, not saying that we need to listen to every single rumor about teams trying to trade up, but to hear a team like the Rams, and others were interested of moving up in the top 10 for the guy, I do think the NFL told us, everything we didn't know about his talent level. So that said, a lot of wide receivers have been drafted this high over the years, and for every Malik Neighbors and Jamar Chase, man, there have been the Roma Dunzeys, the Garrett Wilsons, the Drake Londons, Devonta Smiths, who just weren't quite able to meet, that overall sky-high expectation level. I will say I was drafting a lot more T-Mac earlier in this offseason. I know we're still in the end of June, so it feels weird to say that. But, looking at him now, going around that top 20 mark, I have not been clicking his name quite as often more recently because, again, we're always changing. Don't hate the player, hate the ADP, and all of that. But looking at him now, Dwain, right now going as the wide receiver 21 over on Underdog Fantasy. I mean, if it's him versus JSM versus Mike Evans versus Terry McLaurin, I am going to take those other guys ahead of him more times than not.
Yeah, it's tough. The thing we have to remember is 29%, right, of top 12 wide receivers if we go back to 2011, are guys that are entering the conversation that have never been there before, and rookies are a big part of it. And that's why Tet McMillan does land next to these names, because some people probably listen to this, Ian, and being like, Tet McMillan's name is next to Mike Evans and Terry McLaurin and some of these guys. There's a reason why, guys. His profile is really good, and just historically, rookies have been a big part of the mix of finding someone that can perform like a wide receiver one that you don't have to draft like a wide receiver one. I am with Ian. I think this is a tough mix. Like JSN broke out in a huge way in year 2. I mean, so like we've already seen JSN as a prospect we really liked, and now he's already done it at the NFL level. So I'm with you. I have JSN ahead of Tet McMillan. Mike Evans, the only issue there is, okay, he's getting older. But last year he had one of the best years of his career, right? And he was running all these different routes. So it's like hard to just immediately dismiss that. So I do think Tet's very well priced, though. I do like him over DJ Moore. I like him over Xavier Worthy. A lot of the guys that go behind him. I like him over Jamison Williams as well. So I think he's in a good range. I do think he has the chance to be a top 12 guy this year, but most likely, like what we're looking to get out of Tet McMillan is him finishing, as a solid wide receiver 2, which can still be good for fantasy. And right now, though, you're drafting him as a wide receiver 2. You're drafting him at wide receiver 21. So I think the market's pretty accurate right now on Tet McMillan.
Again, situation where Dwain, you like rookie wide receivers more than I do, okay? And at some of their prices, I totally get the Matthew Golden's. That's just what it is. Like what you listed, I think, last episode, your top 3 most drafted wide receivers are all rookies. I've been shying away from it just a little bit more. We'll find out in 6 short months, which one was more right on it. But I will say, just over the past 10 years, I wonder if we could be seeing a shift in things, because running backs generally been where we've seen more high-end rookie performers, all right? 29 different running backs over the past decade have put up top 24 numbers, just 12 wide receivers. That said, 5 of those have come in the last 2 years alone. So I do wonder if maybe we're seeing a shift. And hey, college offenses are evolving faster than ever. Maybe that means we're getting more pro-ready pass catchers at the next level. But hey, guys, the concern we keep kind of going back to all the way across here is the reality that maybe this offense won't be that great. We are not trying to hate on you guys, Panthers fans. Again, I said a lot of really nice things about Bryce Young during that second half stretch. That said, Vegas does still project them based on their implied, lines throughout the season to have the 9th lowest scoring offense. So, Dwain, when we do look at Bryce Young's second half of the season, and hey, if you want to look at PFF's big-time throw rate and PFF passing grade, you're going to see a guy that, again, is up there with some of the better quarterbacks in the league. But hey, we also did have an entire rookie season. We had 2 starts in the last year that were horrendous. I feel a little skeptical just looking at 8 games and saying, oh my gosh, not only is this going to be Bryce Young's new baseline, he's going to be even better into the future. So in your opinion, Dwain, what is a ceiling scenario for Bryce Young in 2025 based on what we've seen from him during the first 2 years of his career?
Well, first, let's just talk about what he did, down the stretch. So last year, after he reclaimed that starting role from Andy Dalton in Week 8, he averaged 210
How did he do that, by the way?
Game.
How did he get the job back?
I know there was an accident, but all I can do is say that what did he do when he got his opportunity? Ian, 18.9 fantasy points per game. That's pretty good, right? Underlying stats, though, 210 passing yards per game. Now, that's not as terrible as it sounds, guys. Over the last 3 years, the average NFL starter is averaging 215 yards per game. Part of that is the way the defenses are playing so deep, changing their coverages right at the snap. But the other part is we've lost some really good quarterbacks. Tom Brady's left the league. Peyton Manning's left the league. I know Peyton's been gone longer, but Drew Brees. We've had some really good pocket passers that used to really be a part of, right, how we got these higher passing yards per game numbers. They've left. So it's some combination of those things. But my point being, the 210 compared to the rest of the league over the last 3 years is not terrible for Brees Hall. Touchdowns per game, 1.5. Like, we like that. We would take that. Interceptions, he really protected the ball, 0.6 per game. But here's the big part, man. 22.3 rushing yards per game. And when you go back to college and you look at Bryce Young, when he first came into college, he was actually labeled as one of these dual threat quarterbacks. He gets to Alabama, what happens? When he scrambles and buys time, he could take off and run, but why would you when Devonta Smith or one of these elite wide receivers getting taken in the first round of the NFL draft are getting open downfield and you just throw it to them instead because they know how to run that scramble drill with you? Well, last year, he didn't have those things open because, let's face it, the pass catchers were not that great in Carolina last year. So what did he do? He took off on those scrambles. And so I think that's the thing. that's the most that has my attention the most is, man, could he be a 20 to 25 scramble guy? Because then if he just improved to like a 225, 235 passing yards per game, like there could be some room for upside. And honestly, I had not thought about this enough, but I saw it on the show sheet and you made me really dig into it deep. So his ceiling and floor in the baseline model is this: 13.1 floor. You guys don't like that, and you shouldn't. It's terrible. His median projection is 16, also not good. That's not something you want to start in fantasy football. His ceiling is 20.9. We're looking for guys that are 22 or above. Now, 20.9 is not like the worst thing ever, so it's an okay ceiling. But if I were to take, and his projections right now, I have him passing for 205 yards per game, 1.3 touchdowns per game, 0.7 picks per game. I know, guys, a little nerdy, but 20.7 rushing yards per game and getting 3 rushing touchdowns on the season, okay? But if I were to go use the numbers that he had from last year down the stretch and input those into our ceiling floor logic instead of doing some of the regression that I did to get to his projections, his median outcome would now be 17.1 and his ceiling would be 22.1. So there is a sliver. There's a sliver here, and a lot of it does come down to, we just saw a new level with Bryce Young as a rusher last year, and I don't think it's a complete fluke. Again, going back to college, he did scramble, but he just often didn't end up running when he scrambled because his weapons were so good, he would just throw the ball down the field. So you made me do this research, so thank you, Ian. There is more upside than what I thought. With Bryce Young, he's still not a guy I'm going out of my way to draft, but I will be honest, this puts him more back on the map for me in best ball drafts, where it's the freaking craze. And I'll be honest, this is a different topic for a different day, but the number of people drafting 3 quarterbacks, even when they take like Jaden Daniels or someone like that, then they turn around and take another quarterback in round 8, and then they're taking, Bryce Young in round 15. He is in play for me, right, as a QB2 or as a QB3, depending on my build.
Especially if you already drafted T-Mac, I think that's enough of a tiebreaker with him and a bunch of other, similar quarterbacks you have in a tier. Go ahead and build that stack. But I'm with you, man. Like when I did dive into this preview, which you guys can all read if you're into that kind of thing, still in the year 2025 over on fantasylife.com, it was the rushing that really helped him take that step. I mean, from weeks 13 through 18, we're talking about the second most fantasy points from rushing of any quarterback, not named Josh Allen out here, all right? He had 5 rushing touchdowns in his last 6 games of the season. So yes, he can move around a little bit. I mean, during his time in Alabama, the off-script plays that he was making, like that was his calling card. The dude was getting Frank Tarkenton comps for a reason, all right? That's fun. But man, you look at his stature, you look at the overall rushing ability when he is doing it, I just have a hard time expecting him to, again, being the sort of dual threat quarterback who can stand up over 18 games. That was not a short joke, I swear. And again, I just get concerned about that relative to these other guys. So Dwain, I know you have him ranked a little bit lower, QB 28. I have him QB 22, but end of the day, look, it's more of a guy that you get taken in the late round anyway. I more so have been throwing darts in that range. I prefer guys like Stroud and even Michael Penix, honestly. And again, sounds like with your ranking, you generally do too.
Yeah. I will say this: most of his runs are scrambles, and we do see quarterbacks, they're much more able to protect themselves, because what they're doing is they're escaping the pocket. They see the defensive backs, have their back turned to them. They're just taking off. Those are more likely to be these 8-10 yard carries where they just get out of bounds, right? Or they have plenty of time to slide. The design run attempts are where now the defense knows that you're getting the ball, and they all have their ears pinned back and they're coming at you. And sometimes the quarterbacks can they time the slide a tad late, Ian, in some of those situations. So I will say I'm with you on the size, but when it's a scrambling sort of situation, I do think the quarterbacks can protect themselves a little bit better. Having said all that, yes, I'm with you. Like Bryce Young, he's a low-end QB2.
It helps. I will say this time last year as well, I think we had a higher opinion, deservedly so, on Dave Canales, but seeing what, Liam Cohen did with the same sort of group in Tampa Bay and the higher heights he reached. And just for Canales, man, that was the effort we got from Bryce Young in this offense the first 2 games of last season. And yeah, it did literally take a car crash to Dalton. If Andy Dalton was driving a little bit more safely, I don't know what happened with the car crash, but if Andy Dalton decided just to take an Uber that day, would Bryce Young still be on the Panthers? I mean, I seriously wonder at this point. And then to see the second half success, so much of it came from these big time throws, these tough, and it's amazing that Bryce would make those throws. And that he did do it, man. But nothing was easy in this offense at the end of last year. And some of that had to do with obviously the lack of pass catchers. Overall, wide receivers and tight ends in Carolina combined to be dead last in ESPN's open rating. So again, the Jimmies and Joes weren't making it easy for Canales out there. But I just kind of look at the Panthers as an organization and as Canales, and I'm like, why should we be betting on an exception here?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think he's probably still on the team, but who knows? Maybe they move on. I will say this: the big time throw thing we did see at Alabama, and we did see it with him buying time. So I think a lot of this comes down to like how good's Tet McMillan. Does Tet McMillan give him this new weapon that he can really use down the field? And can Tet be the kind of player that can attack all four layers of the field? And this will be it. Like if Bryce Young doesn't do it this year, then I think it is fair to question whether or not he will be thought of as the starter in Carolina moving forward.
Any love, Dwain, for the last relevant starter here in Carolina, tight end Ja'Tavion Sanders, someone who did manage to find a full-time role for portions of last year. That said, Tommy Tremble's our guy, while he is undergoing back surgery, is expected to be ready by training camp. And I do worry if Notre Dame tight end Mitchell Evans, who they took in round 5, just might be the best of them all. Of course, this is an offense that has been willing to rotate tight ends and really hasn't made a habit of throwing to them really over the course of the last several years.
Yeah, I mean, the thing you like about Ja'Tavion Sanders is he is a receiving profile tight end. Yeah. So if it works out for him, right, that's what we're looking for. Someone that can catch balls, someone that can demand targets. Having said that, didn't really do that last year. 14% targets per route run, 1.09 yards per route run. You talked about him earning a little bit more playing time, and he was able to do that, but it was pretty underwhelming. Now, again, having said that, we've become spoiled by these early tight end breakouts we've seen. I'm old enough to remember, Ian, going back to Trey McBride's rookie season, whenever he finally took over towards the end of the year, got some more playing time and had a 12% targets per route run, and yours truly decided the next year not to draft very much Trey McBride, and that was a massive mistake because by the end of year 2, Trey McBride was actually worth a lot in fantasy football. So it's one of these things where like you can't dismiss him. You still would rather see better numbers than this, and you're going to have to play in a really deep league. Maybe you're playing in a tight end premium league, then you're going to take a shot on Ja'Tavion Sanders late. You're playing in some of these leagues I get, messages about where you guys are starting 2 tight ends. Ja'Tavion Sanders is going to be in play in those scenarios. Most of you, if you're not playing in best ball where you're taking him as your 3rd tight end, most of you are just going to be looking at Ja'Tavion Sanders as someone that we'll have to talk about on the waiver wire if he blows up early in the year.
And honestly, even in those leagues where you are dipping your toes into these late round tight end waters, I find myself preferring, the Juwan Johnsons of the world, even to Sanders straight up. So we'll see what happens there, and we will see what happens with the 2025 Panthers overall. Dwain, time for the win total, sitting at 6.5. I'm going to go under. I actually had overwritten on my show sheet, but the more we talk about it, man, I just don't think there's enough blue chippers really on either side of the ball to be overly confident. Maybe T-Mac is the next big thing, but even then, man, we just can't assume every rookie wide receiver coming out is going to be able to perform at the level of Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas Jr. And, look how their teams did last year, even with them putting forward such great rookie campaigns. So defense still very much a work in progress. I know they're trying to take some steps to improve the line of scrimmage and everything. Maybe they can overcome it, but really, just again, from coaching to the actual players out there and even the incoming additions, not enough around here for me to be overly, optimistic. Give me under 6.5. What say you?
I mean, I'm going to go with the over, but I feel you. It's tough. They are trying to make the defense better. Their 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round picks were all spent on the defense this year. Obviously, the round 1 pick went to Tet McMillan, hopefully helping Bryce Young take that next step forward. Really, what it comes down to me is it's one of the easier schedules, Ian. It's the 5th easiest schedule in the NFL. Ooh. Now, having said that, and based on your opponent's win percentage, having said that, if you go back historically and look at these teams that just happen to have the easiest strength of schedule based on win percentage from the year before, it's not like it suddenly changed all of these teams. You guys can check this out over at NFL.com's. It's operations NFL.com. Putting in the research over here. The 2024 Saints still went 5-12. Ian, the 2024 Falcons went 8-9. 2023 Falcons went 7-10. So hey, there's 2 potential overs there. Yeah. The Cowboys. I'm not going to include that. They went went 12-5. The Commanders won 8 games. Eagles won 9 games. That was in 2021. And then the Ravens. So some of those teams were already good, but it's not like it suddenly meant that, oh, you're a lock just to win all these extra games. I'm going to go over, though. I'm going to say they win 7 games. I'm really getting out over my skis here over the 6.5.
I will say, to give Bryce Young some credit in particular, because again, I do think he is a talented enough quarterback to start in the league. I think it's more so being the environment that's held him down a little bit here. But man, you look at some of those game tying or, potential game winning drives he had last year. This team was in it, man, against the Eagles, the Bucks, the Chiefs, down the stretch there. Even could have had that, real memorable touchdown to Leggett, but, he unfortunately dropped it. So hopefully, again, we see more good from bad from Bryce. It's awesome. He did enough last year to get this shot in year 3 to last. We'll have to see what happens. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this team preview, we invite you to check out more of them. Like and subscribe wherever you listen if you're into that kind of thing here on the Fantasy Life Show. So for Dwain, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for checking us out. And until next time, take care, everybody.